The story begins with a girl named Samantha. Samantha suffered due to her excessive height, to the extent that she was taller than the tallest boy in her school. She lived with her mother, father, and her brother Ron, who was the complete opposite of her in height, being suitably tall and handsome, unlike Samantha, who had only modest beauty. At school, Samantha was bullied by her friends because of her height. She recalls that the girl who bullied her the most was Judith and her friend Anna. One day, while Samantha was on her way to solve a problem on the board, she fell on her face as everyone laughed at her. Judith had tripped her to make her look bad in front of the boys. Samantha got up, feeling sad, and looked around before going to the board to solve the problem, but due to her nervousness, she found herself unable to solve anything. She felt that something was wrong with the problem, and while the teacher was reviewing it, Judith laughed and told Samantha that the only wrong thing was thinking that 2 + 3 = 5, not 6. The boys laughed at Samantha again, who felt intense anger and embarrassment and didn't know what to do. Finally, lunchtime arrived, and Samantha sat with her friend Corey, the only one who didn't bully her. While sitting, Corey mentioned that Judith had made fun of Samantha by calling her a derogatory name, playing on her name Samantha because it sounds similar. Samantha felt upset, and suddenly Judith appeared, starting to bully her again, asking why she doesn't just fly away and spare them her presence. Samantha remained silent and didn't respond to Judith as usual, but Corey tried to comfort her, saying that Judith must be jealous, which surprised Samantha. Judith was a beautiful girl with green eyes and long brown hair, slender and well-proportioned, and the best basketball player in the school. Meanwhile, Samantha was not considered beautiful. Her body was disproportionate, and despite her height, she was the worst basketball player on the team. The coach had hoped she would leave after asking her to join the team to take advantage of her height, but soon realized that height doesn't necessarily matter in basketball. The school day passed, and it was time for the last class, which was Samantha's favorite because it was home economics. The teacher was kind, and there was no homework. Each student began making their own cake mixture as taught by the teacher. While Samantha was preparing her ingredients, she noticed Judith watching and laughing at her from a distance. Samantha ignored her and continued her work until she finished and was about to call the teacher to show her work. Suddenly, Judith approached her, holding eggs and flour, and pretended to stumble, spilling everything on Samantha's new shoes. Samantha was devastated. Her new, expensive shoes were ruined by someone as trivial as Judith. Samantha exploded after enduring pranks all day. She lunged at Judith with all her strength, grabbed her by the neck, completely distraught, and demanded to know why Judith was treating her this way. Judith struggled, but Samantha was larger. Finally, the teacher arrived to separate them and asked them to apologize to each other. Judith pretended it was an accident and apologized to Samantha. The class ended, and it was time for basketball practice. Although Samantha hated practice, she decided to go to annoy Judith and not let her feel victorious. Samantha arrived at practice, and as soon as Judith saw her, she mockingly asked why she didn't just fly away to spare everyone. Their conversation was interrupted by the coach's whistle, signaling the start of practice. Judith took the ball to practice with Anna, boasting about their skills. Samantha watched them play skillfully, feeling more depressed because of perfect Judith. After a few minutes, the ball came towards Samantha, and Judith mockingly called her by a derogatory nickname, asking her to catch the ball. Samantha, infuriated by the name Judith used, grabbed the ball, but before she could confront her, Anna snatched the ball away and scored a goal. Samantha became even angrier after realizing the trick and quickly approached Judith to ask why she called her by that name. However, Judith pretended not to hear anything. Their conversation was interrupted by the coach's whistle. At this point, Samantha decided it was time for the day to end and left the practice. Samantha exited the school, devastated, and decided not to go home yet. She got on her bike and suddenly it started to rain, but she decided to continue to release all the negative energy inside her. As she reflected on everything happening because of Judith, who made her life miserable, she reached a path surrounded by trees, specifically for bikes. Lost in her thoughts, Samantha suddenly saw an old woman standing in the middle of the path, drenched in rain, her hair and clothes soaked. Her eyes were as black as coal, and her black hair was scattered over her shoulder. Samantha asked the woman if she needed help. The woman approached Samantha, and a slow, aged voice came from her, saying she was lost and needed to go to Madison Street. Samantha was surprised and told her that the street was quite far from there. The woman asked if Samantha could take her there. Samantha agreed, as it was close to her home anyway. The rain intensified, and the old woman thanked Samantha for her help despite the weather. However, Samantha was concerned about getting home late and worrying everyone. Nevertheless, she decided to continue until suddenly a car appeared in the middle of the road. Samantha avoided the car just in time, but noticed that the woman's expression was frozen as if she didn't see the car. Samantha urged her to move quickly. The woman then smiled at Samantha, thanking her for caring even though she was a stranger. Finally, they reached Madison Street. The woman thanked Samantha, saying she was a kind person and deserved a reward. Samantha refused any reward, insisting she needed to go home. Suddenly, Samantha felt an icy hand holding hers, insisting on giving her a reward. Feeling scared, Samantha agreed to accept the reward so the strange woman would leave her alone. The woman promised to grant her 3 wishes. Surprised, Samantha decided to leave quickly, but the woman pulled out a shimmering black crystal from her bag, assuring it would grant any wish. Samantha, on a whim, wished to become the strongest player on the basketball team. The crystal turned red. The woman closed her eyes for a minute, then the light in the crystal went out. The woman, who introduced herself as Clarissa, thanked Samantha and left, leaving her puzzled and not understanding what had happened. Samantha returned home to find everyone waiting for her at dinner. She sat next to her brother Ron and asked to play basketball after dinner as usual. Ron agreed, although he disliked playing with her at their father's request to train her to be as good as him. After dinner, they went out to play, but when Samantha threw the ball at the basket, it fell to the ground despite being close. Her performance worsened, and Ron laughed as she fell to the ground. Samantha wished her brother would become as short as an insect, then bit her lip, fearing the wish might come true. But then she laughed at herself, because the first wish hadn't come true. Samantha realized the old woman had tricked her and decided to stop playing, returning home with Ron. The next day, Samantha woke up to go to school. There, Judith tried to trip her as usual, but Samantha managed to avoid it. After the school day ended, it was time for a basketball match with another school's team. Samantha had forgotten about the match altogether. She went out with the rest of the team, and as usual, Judith bullied her, wishing she would fly away and never come back. The team arrived at the other school and the match began. Samantha played at her usual level. During the game, she got confused and almost scored in her own team's basket, but luckily, Anna stopped her just in time, preventing a huge embarrassment. Samantha looked around to find everyone, including her coach, laughing at her. She decided to stay away from the court to avoid further embarrassment. As the game continued, Samantha noticed that her team's performance was significantly worse than usual. Suddenly, Judith, followed by Anna and the rest of the team, began to yawn and move slowly. The opposing team started scoring more and more goals. Confused, Samantha watched until the coach called for a timeout and asked the team what was happening. Everyone was sweating profusely, even though the match had just started and they were too tired to continue. The coach looked at Samantha, asking if she was also tired, but Samantha insisted she was fine. The coach tried to motivate the team. The second half began with Samantha being the only one really playing. She realized that her wish might have come true. She became the strongest on the team, but only because everyone else had weakened. Finally, Samantha managed to score 1 goal against 24. The match ended, and the team was relieved to return home quickly. Samantha went home, pondering what had happened, afraid that being the strongest meant everyone else would weaken to the point of death. However, she tried to stay calm and eagerly waited for the next day to see what happened to Judith, Anna, and the rest of the team. The next day, Samantha discovered that the entire team was absent from school due to illness. Worried, she went to the nurse, who told her they had the flu. Relieved it was just a minor illness and not something serious, Samantha's concern grew as the team, especially Judith, remained absent for more than a day. She decided to call Judith to check on her, but hearing her very weak and feeble voice made Samantha more frightened. When she asked about Judith's condition, Judith shocked Samantha by accusing her of casting a spell on them because the incident was strange. Judith said she had spoken to the rest of the team, and they all believed Samantha had cast a spell on them. Samantha was startled by how Judith knew the truth, but decided to quickly end the call, treating it as usual bullying from Judith. However, Samantha decided she must find Clarissa to completely undo her wish. She walked along the tree-lined street where she first met the witch, but to no avail. She then decided to search for her on Madison Street, but the witch was nowhere to be found. Samantha lost all hope, and as she walked, she found herself in front of Judith's house. She decided to visit her and entered Judith's room, finding her as thin as a ghost. Before Samantha could ask about her condition, Judith accused her again of being a witch and blamed her for her illness. Samantha exploded in anger, saying Judith deserved it for her bullying. Suddenly realizing she had confessed, Samantha was fortunately interrupted by Judith's mother's voice, prompting her to quickly leave while wishing Judith would disappear forever. Suddenly, the witch Clarissa appeared behind her, stating that this was Samantha's second wish and she would grant it. Then Samantha found herself in bed at 8:30 a.m., surprised that her mother hadn't woken her up at 7 a.m. as usual. She quickly got up to find the house empty, guessing her family had to leave for somewhere. She hurriedly dressed to go to school, riding her bike. Strangely, the streets were empty, with no people or cars, completely silent, which was unusual. Arriving at school, Samantha was shocked to find it completely empty. She frantically searched everywhere, confirming there was nobody around. She quickly rode her bike to the city center, the only place she thought people would be. But when she arrived, she discovered it was also deserted, with no trace of any living creature except herself. Samantha collapsed, realizing the witch had made everyone disappear instead of just Judith, including her family. She returned home, distraught and not knowing what to do, until she suddenly heard footsteps behind her. Turning around, she found Clarissa. Samantha, in tears, asked why she did this to her. Clarissa explained that magic is not perfect and doesn't always grant exactly what they want, so she must be careful with her last wish. After a moment of silence, Samantha wished for everything to go back to normal, but with Judith seeing her as the greatest girl in the world. Clarissa nodded. The crystal glowed red, and suddenly Samantha found herself in her bed at 7 a.m., hearing her mother waking her up. Overjoyed, she ran to hug her parents, expressing her happiness. Then Samantha went to school, where she found Judith healthy and everything as it was. Suddenly, Judith, smiling, left Anna's side and sat next to Samantha. To Samantha's astonishment, Judith removed her cap, revealing hair identical to Samantha's, saying she had cut her hair to look like hers because she admired her. Realizing her wish had come true, and Judith was now infatuated with her, Samantha thanked her. As she was about to pick up her bag, Judith snatched it, insisting on carrying it for her. Samantha was more surprised and felt like bursting into laughter, while everyone else watched the strange scene unfold. At the end of the day, there was a new basketball match with a different school. While the coach was giving instructions to the students, Judith interrupted, suggesting they should name their team Team Sam because she was the greatest player. The whole team, including the coach who continued speaking without paying attention to Judith, was surprised. Then Judith interrupted again, saying that Samantha should be the team captain because she was the best. This prompted Anna to loudly question what had happened to Judith. The coach calmed them down and asked them to go to the court, and the match began. Instead of focusing on her own play, Judith started imitating Samantha in everything. If Samantha grabbed the ball and fell, Judith did the same. The situation continued until Anna, in frustration, yelled at Judith, asking why she was copying that stupid cow and if she was trying to ruin them. This led to a fight between Judith and Anna, all because Judith was defending Samantha, who she had insulted. The match ended, and Samantha went back to the changing room, only to be surprised by Judith waiting for her with her clothes and towel to help her change. Samantha was increasingly uncomfortable with Judith's behavior. Suddenly, Judith asked her to come over to her house to study math together, but Samantha managed to refuse, claiming she had plans with her father. After finally getting away from Judith, Samantha returned home. Entering her room and sitting on her bed, she was shocked to see her wardrobe door open. Paralyzed with fear, she couldn't even scream. Suddenly, Judith emerged, having hidden in the wardrobe, waiting for Samantha to come back so they could study together. Samantha was infuriated and demanded Judith leave her house and never do something like this again. Judith cried and left through the same window she had entered. Samantha began to feel that she couldn't tolerate this situation much longer. At least when Judith was bullying her, she kept her distance. But now, seeing Samantha as her role model, she was clinging to her all the time. On the next day, Samantha woke up, preparing for another busy day. After she packed her bag and opened the front door, she was shocked to find Judith waiting for her, suggesting they could walk together to school. Judith offered that if Samantha wanted to ride her bike, she could do so, and Judith would run alongside her. At this, Samantha broke down, screaming and running to get away from Judith, but Judith kept running after her, pleading to run together if she wanted. Samantha continued running frantically until suddenly, the witch appeared in front of her. The witch said she sensed Samantha wasn't happy, so she decided to let her make another wish, despite having already made 3. Samantha wished for everything to go back to how it was before she met the witch, and that Judith would be the one to meet her instead, so her life would be ruined like hers. The witch agreed, and Samantha continued running after seeing Judith approaching her. Suddenly, The witch stopped in front of Judith, and Samantha watched them talking, realizing everything had gone back to how it was before. A minute later, Samantha felt hungry. Suddenly, she dropped to the ground, picking up a worm with her long beak, and then spread her wings to fly away into the sky. From above, she saw Judith smiling and extremely happy. Samantha realized she had wished to become a bird as Judith had always taunted her, to fly away and leave everyone in peace.